Hello, hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is your girl Mitzi, and this is Mitzi. Let's think about it. Today, we are thinking about moving math forward, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, we need to move math forward. So, I have Jerry here who has an expertise, passion galore on this topic, and we are going to pick his brain and figure out what's going on with it, right?
Um,
So,
Pick away.
thank Thank you so much, Jerry, for coming on my show. I am really excited to have you on here because math is a topic that, like you were talking about earlier, is a serious situation where a lot of people are having difficulties with. So, when you hear the words math, just the word math alone, what does that make you think about?
Logic. To me, if you learn math, you're learning logic. They both think the same.
Oh, very nice. That is interesting. Logic. I wouldn't have thought about that. So, so that leads to my next question is, when did you discover the love of math?
uh, about a month before I came out of the womb. For some reason, I was born loving math, and I've never stopped.
Just the numbers, did it just make sense to you, or how did you know that it just worked for you?
You'll laugh at this one. As I was growing up, if someone mentioned a number, like even give me their phone number 6 months ago, I didn't even think about it. I'd still remember it 6 months later. But if you give me your name, I'll forget it by the end of the hour.
Oh,
So,
okay.
so it's just one of those lucky things for me.
Okay, okay. So what do you think? Why do you think it's so difficult for people to grasp math and the concept of what brings in math altogether?
That's the whole ball of wax right there. As a matter of fact, turns out that neuroscience came into the picture about a year or two back, and they said they did some homework and some analyzing research and whatnot. They discovered the part of your brain, your dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, right about there.
Okay.
In the average person, you are way above average, so you're okay. But in the average person, that does not mature until your mid 20s. And that's the part that you use for analyzing abstract thoughts, like doing a math word problem. And here we are asking kids in high school and whatnot, sixth grade through 12th grade, to use something they don't have, except for the few that have matured early. And of course, those are your A students. So I hate to say it, but you can't give the teacher credit for them being A students. They are A students because they matured early with their brain.
Mm,
But that means the majority of the students, all they do is that you're asking them to try and do something that they can't really do yet because they're still adolescent. They don't have that ability to think like an adult, even though they look like they're getting older like an adult. That's all looks, it's not up here.
yeah, I mean that makes sense. I guess it just needs more development to really receive it. So
Exactly.
that's really interesting because I remember being in math class and I actually did really well when I paid attention. You know what I mean? The numbers made sense, everything was good. When I paid attention and I was actually focused in class, I was that A student. I made it to the honor. I made it to like that pre-algebra and top whatever calculus, whatever class that was. I made it in, but then I was just like, I don't need this to graduate. So then I just kind of dropped out and I let it go because they brought in imagination, imaginated numbers, and that like threw me off. So I have to ask you, what is your thoughts on those imaginary numbers that they throw in these math equations?
uh,
Why do they have it? And why is it there?
Turns out that's something that goes back to our logic abilities here.
Okay.
When we try to solve problems, we use numbers and whatnot that you're familiar with, and they work. And since you have the mature brain early, and you're over 25 anyway by now, I hope you are. You look like you're
Yeah.
young.
Yeah.
But anyway, um, you already can think logically. But now there's other parts of logic too. Like, for instance, if you try to compute the path for a spaceship to go from here to Mars, that's going through three-dimensional space, and it's very complex. And it requires more than standard numbers. It requires imaginary numbers. So they actually have a useful value. They can do things that we can't do without them. And they help us get from place to place.
Well, I love that explanation. I honestly do, because when you put it in that sense, it makes sense. You know what I mean? If you put it in that type of verbatim, it makes sense why those imaginary numbers exist, because it allows us to calculate what we don't fully understand or fully know or fully are aware. Because, like you said, when you
Yeah.
go out into outer space, you are dealing with dark matter, you are dealing with all these space waves and space gravity, space time. I mean, whole different types of scenarios that you can't necessarily calculate here on Earth, where we have so many other layers and so many other things in place. So yeah, that makes sense. So I guess that
So,
leads me to my next question is,
so see, with imaginary numbers, you can start making sense out of spacey people too. Then, right?
oh,
A lot of people lost in space. Now we can figure them out. I'm
right,
sorry. Go
right.
ahead.
No, 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 that's true, right? When you're lost in space mentally, you can kind of figure that out. No, that is funny. But then also, like, if you think in a literal sense too, like there could be something more that we just don't know. So in both ends of the spectrums, you can kind of think about it that way. But I know that you wrote a book called Moving Math Forward. And I know this is in hopes to help um other people learn about math. So I really want to know, what made you dive in and write all of this information into a book and share it with the world?
Well, when I started teaching high school math, I found out that there was a large category where the majority of students could not solve word problems. And
Mm.
that is the heart of mathematics, actually. And without that, I felt like I wasn't doing my job right. So I started hitting all the teachers that had been there longer, and they said that they never got an answer either. So I did some research and I dug around and got into looking at neuroscience. And that's when I found out that just recently, neuroscience has come up with their research showing that, how would you say it? The part of your brain that I talked about for solving abstract thoughts is used for doing word problems. And no one knew this till a couple of years ago. And so I dug around and found out what we're supposed to do to use this. And so far, no one's done anything to do something with that. So here we've discovered a tremendous important fact, and no one's doing anything to help people learn more than they have already lost in the past, left done in the past, because they're still lost. I, mean, I guess the point I was trying to get to, and I didn't work it in very well, is that almost every adult I had talked to says that when they were in high school, they always felt lost in math class. They would just sit and stare and wait for the bell to ring. And it turns out now that neuroscience has explained why, because that part of their brain was not mature enough yet. And teachers kept thinking, well, these kids look just about like me. They should be able to think like me. Now I just have to push them.
Yeah.
And that's like, I'm not sure what the good comparison would be, but you can't push fire to be water, and you can't push A to be B. If you got an immature brain and it says I can't comprehend looking at abstract ways of doing things 10 different ways, I need one specific way to do it. And that's what neuroscience said. To overcome the fact that these kids don't have a mature brain, you have to not just ask them to think about it, but you have to provide them with a routine, one consistent routine that they can focus on it. And that way they can learn something they can use until their own abilities mature later. And then they won't grow up becoming adults that think I can't do math word problems. Instead of raising a bunch of people thinking they're stupid, we can raise them and tell them, okay, use this until you get your own way coming along later, but be patient because it's not here yet. Some will come in a year or two, some will come in 10 years. Just be see where you are later. Don't worry about it now.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
here we got a way to reach kids now. Science has done its job and no one's doing anything with it. So I wrote the book, Math is Not Magic: How to Solve Your Math Word Problems. And sure enough, it does exactly what neuroscience says. The first couple pages of the book explain the process, a routine I call PRESS, which stands for picture, record, equation, resubstitute, and solve. Just those 5 steps, which is a lot of detail I get some other time. But if you buy the book or look at the book, you will find out that the first few pages explain that method, explains how it works and why we have to use it because of what neuroscience found. And then the rest of the book just covers all the examples covering all subjects, 7 areas of mathematics that are taught. And so there's not a lot of complicated reading. You just learn one method and you see all the examples of how they work as you go through different courses in math. And all of a sudden, we're going to start being to raise students, and instead of having blank faces, they will have logical looking faces and logical brains. And what do you think? Does the world need that or not?
Oh, we do. Oh, I believe it. We really do. I think if we can grasp this concept of math and help people, help the children, the youth realize that it's one, it's not scary, two, is not that hard, and three,
Yeah,
it's not impossible, then it will develop something inside of them that will ignite. Oh my goodness, it can ignite them for the rest of their lives because
exactly.
we learn about math in such a way that seems so simple that it doesn't get the job done because when we are adults, we don't grasp those concepts because now we're just like, oh, I never needed to know the eight sides of an octagon or anything like that. You know what I mean? That's their argument now. But it's like if we actually took the basics of math, then we can implement it now and we wouldn't be in so much debt. We wouldn't have so much stress with money. We wouldn't feel like somebody's robbing us if we actually knew how to do our own calculations and be aware of where our everything is going with our finances. So I think overall this has a great foundation for the future because what we have as children will lead us into adulthood. So it's like it lingers on. So yeah, absolutely. I think this is a great way for parents to consider when they're studying with their children and helping them with math.
Yep.
You know, this that reignite
You
that
couldn't have said it
information
better.
and yeah, and I think that's a great way what you're doing. So it's like I understand your love for math and I understand why you wrote this book. So now I want to understand the really nitty details. How did you come up with this equation press, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, neuroscience said, like I said, this all this research, a big area of science, came down to just a simple concept: the fact that we have to just provide one consistent concept, and that'll get around this problem. That we have to realize that we're losing people now. We've been losing them forever, and we have to stop that because we got to stop losing people and making them think they're growing up stupid. So anyway, we got to now, and it's just that that's exactly the whole point is the fact that this is not complicated. It's just that simple. If you buy this, what I call a primer, my book, and if every kid in the school is involved in it, they'll have their own primer, no matter what class they, what math class they go to. When it comes to doing word problems, this one concept will get them through any math class. By the time they finish high school, instead of thinking math is impossible for somebody else, they have to do it. Now they think they can do it. That's going to help their confidence, going to help their intelligence. They're going to look forward to doing things instead of saying their mind is turned off. So we've got to make this work. And I went out a couple of years ago when this it developed for me, and I it was about the same time COVID came along, and I tried talking to schools, and if I wasn't talking COVID, they wouldn't talk to me. They didn't care if it was a good idea or not. They didn't care. So anyway, I went and I talked to homeschoolers, and they loved it. And I sold like 3,000 copies. And now it's a couple of years later. Schools are finally getting past COVID, and I'm trying to reach them. But there's, well, I don't know how to say this without insulting someone, but there's two parts of school. There's the teachers and there's the administrators. And the teachers spend all their time trying to teach the kids, and the administrators spend all their time trying to run the school. But then it's gotten to the point now where schools are so big that the administrators are lost contact with the students.
Yeah.
And if I go to the teachers, they tell me I have to go to the administrators because they're the ones that are going to buy the concept and buy the book for the kids to have. But I can't talk to them because they won't talk to me.
Yeah, yeah.
So I need someone like you that can reach everyone.
Right, exactly. That's why we have this platform so that we can bring people together and realize, you know what, this is something bigger than us. This is something that we all need to consider for
Yeah.
ourselves and for the next generation because we are now changing the curriculum of life, of people's mindsets and in education, you know what I mean? We see people talk about education system all the time and how there needs to be a restructuring around it
Yep.
because there's a fault in the system and as adults, we are realizing there's so many ways that they have failed us. And even in more in the inner, in the bigger cities, they have even failed those students because they are just a number.
Sad
They're
but
just
true.
yeah, they're just cattle in the farm. They're just collecting, making sure that they show up. And as long as they show up, then the administrators are happy, the teachers are happy. They don't care if the students are receiving the knowledge. They don't care if it's retaining in them. They don't care how it's going to affect their mind later on. They don't care as long as you read How to Kill a Mockingbird, how to do 10 times 5, and you know what I mean, those basic concepts, then okay, then you're fine. But it's like we have to think bigger, you know what I mean? We have to realize all this that impacts your life, because when you were talking about word problems and how you were seeing that being an issue in your class, I can agree. Word problems are hard because words are so vague to me. You know what I mean?
But
they're
still, it's still at the heart of mathematics. We don't want to pass them up. And like your 10 times
exactly.
5 example, 10 times 5, that reminded me of the fact that before sixth grade, when you're young kids and everyone expects you to be young, they teach you not math, but arithmetic.
Mm,
Arithmetic is just numbers that multiply, divide, add, subtract. And they go into that and they show you one way to do it. And they're always consistent doing it. And everyone learns it. And then
mhm.
when you get a little older, they think, well, now we got word problems for them to learn. But we think they're adults now, so we're not going to be consistent anymore. And then you just threw away the perfect solution. So we have to tell them to go back. And when they get to sixth grade, continue that way and continue to think of them as immature so that you can still reach them and not throw them away.
I think that is a very valid point. I think if we as adults can remember that these children are still immature and not with our mind frame as adults, you know what I mean? We have to give them that understanding. And we also have
Yep.
to remember every child learns differently too. So it's like we all are thinking that all of these kids are fishes and they're going to be swimming super, super fast around the course. But it's like, no, not all of them are fishes. Some of them are monkeys. Some of them are giraffes. Some of them are land animals. You know what I mean? Or air animals. You know what I mean? They're all different types of species. And it's like we need to just embrace that. And then I think this equation does that for all
Yep.
types. You know what I mean? Because it allows you to really see the situation for what it is, and it allows you to expand your mind. And I think that's the hardest thing, because I was seeing a video where a mother was getting so frustrated with her child because she asked them if Johnny had 3 apples, and Bobby took one away, how many apples does he have? And the kid was like 4, and the mother was like, no, that's not right. And she kept on getting mad and kept on only reiterating. So it's like, in those type of situations, what advice could you give the parent?
I had a student one time say, why is math class the only place you can go when someone tells you that it's normal to think about someone having 300 television sets and 14 bananas and find out what the price of apples are? So that's just again, getting it back to that point. We got to stop thinking complex. We got to remember that it's simple, and that's all there is to it. Thinking is really simple. Like when you're talking at 100 miles an hour here, and you're thinking while you're doing it, and you're doing it without having anything complex going on. Now, if we can teach people to think about that way in math class, they're going to grow up a lot smarter than they are now. And the world sure needs that.
I like that. I love the way that you put that. And you really do make it sound so simple and easy and not so stressful. That
And
the
that's what
way
we got to,
the
and that's what we got to sell the schools, because if they realize that this is not something complex, it's not expensive. All they do is just continue to stay like they've been staying, like they were. They just got their own cure by not changing. Instead of just treat kids like they're adolescents yet until they get out of high school. And then they'll get more mature even faster because you help them keep their minds open.
Exactly. Exactly. They have something to default to. So it's like when you have that equation to default to, then it's always in the back of their mind, so that when they are in adulthood and they are ready to do, these high honor classes in college where that requires lots and loads of math, you know what I mean? They won't feel like, oh, this dread in their heart, like now I gotta take a math class. You know what I mean? This dreadfulness, because I know my mom, she's going back to school, and she was having issues in her math class, and I literally had to tell her, like, slow it down, it's a lot simple. And it's just Just breathe it out because your mind is making it more complicated than what it is. The
Exactly.
numbers are right there. The words are all right there. If you need to break it down, then break it down, but don't put more onto it than what it needs to be because there's nothing
Exactly.
there. You know what I mean? There's not all that imaginary stuff that we add onto the table or add onto the equation or whatever that we have to solve. And I think we do that all in our lives as well. We just add too much and we overthink it. So I think you can use this for
See,
like not just math, but our lives,
so now in your spare time, you can become a math teacher. Now you understand
right? Exactly. Part-time
it.
math teacher, put it on my resume.
I'll sign off on
There you go. I like it, Jerry. So I guess to know you a little bit more, if you could have any superpower, what would be your superpower?
it. I'm pretty altruistic. Um, if we could make everyone be a good person, the world would become paradise. So we got to somehow continue, not continue, but what's the right word I'm looking for there? We got to train kids to stop feeling lost. We got to start making them take a direction that puts them into being a good role model. So the whole world can be a paradise for everyone, the few
Yeah.
that try.
Yeah. I think that's a
And
beautiful thing.
I know that's why I'm an altruist. Everyone thinks I'm crazy.
You're not crazy in my book, Jerry. You're my type of person. You're
But
my people.
and I'm counting on you to find me a way to contact all these school administrators and make them call me and tell me what they need, and I'll give them whatever they need to get them going.
Right, right. There you go. See, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening, then listen, really listen and pay attention because this is the stuff that's not going to just help you and just the less stress of your students, the less stress of your children that's going through their math classes or courses. You know, even as adults, we're going back to school, like, my mom who's going back to college at an older age, you know what I mean? That still lingers in you, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
having this knowledge can truly help you in the long run, and I think that's a beautiful thing. So I guess to start wrapping up the show, what can be some lasting words of wisdom to keep us all thinking?
Well, let me check my notes real quick here.
Go ahead, check them out.
My book is what I call a primer, and if every kid has it, then every teacher, student, parent, tutor, no matter how you look at it, if they all use the same method, the kids going to start understanding it. And then that's going to move us into the next generation instead of leaving us stuck back in the last 10 generations where we never went anywhere. So now we can start moving forward. And I'm counting on this show being the change point in life. Where from this point forward, we're going to stop going like this. We're going to start going this way, uphill.
There you
We're going to
go.
have the world actually the human race might actually be considered to have intelligent people instead of the politicians we have now.
Yeah, right, exactly. Let's start having more intelligence in our lives by just thinking about something so simple as math in a new way, not having this dark, eerie feeling. I really do, and I really am glad that we had this conversation and brought some light into math instead of the darkness that lingers in everybody's mind.
Well, here's one for you. Instead of thinking of math as a four-letter word, think of math as a letter that has is a word that has four letters in it. So it's not a four-letter word, but it only has four letters in it. So now you can think of it as a good word, not as a four-letter word.
Oh, you got to switch the words around. Reverse psychology. See, Jerry, you are my
There it is.
people.
You're the psychologist. There you go.
See, ladies and gentlemen, this is the good stuff. And if you want to check out his book, because why wouldn't you after this conversation? Please check him out. Check out his website. It has access to all of the goodness that he has to offer the world. It has his access to his book in many platforms. He made it easy, made it simple, so that we have no excuse not to activate this in our lives. So, with
And
that being
please
said, go ahead.
and please contact me, every one of you out there, and we'll work together to make this all move forward, make the world a better place.
There you go. See, that's the goal is to make the world a better place and to always keep thinking, y'all. Bye.